Night Vision. Following clues left by our ancestors, we unbury the past to reveal a knowledge of unfathomable value, putting us just a little closer to our own true birthrights. From the secret history of a possible bloodline of Jesus Christ, the secret history of America's founders, to the secret history of extraterrestrial interaction on our planet, here to bring light to the night. Your host for Night Vision Radio, Renee Barnett.
Hey everyone, thanks for joining me tonight. I have a great show planned, and it's going to be a lot of fun, I think. A lot of really juicy things to get into with my wonderful guest. But before we get started, I wanted to, if you'll indulge me for just a moment, I wanted to do a bit of a public service announcement, but from a very personal point of view and place. I know that you've all seen the news, and you may have even known someone who has had an addiction problem, and you've all heard of this horrible thing out there called fentanyl that is killing so many people. And just a couple days ago, one of my kids overdosed on fentanyl, actually died, and was revived. I just found out that he had actually died today. I found that out, and it's been like just blowing my mind at how close that call was. But I just want to warn everyone against this. If you haven't heard about how deadly it is, and the thing of it is that they're putting in other things, they're cutting other drugs with it. And I don't know, it's my understanding, although I don't know yet, that he actually purposely knew he was taking it. And, I know this is a surprise to my cousin who's listening and is in the chat room. He knows that we've had a lot of struggles with this young man. And I just wanted to say that, if you know someone who's struggling with problems, please talk to them about this situation. You don't know what you're getting. You really don't. And each and every time you take that, either knowingly or unknowingly, that is a possibility that you're not going to come out of it. So please talk to your kids, talk to your friends, talk to yourself if you need to. It's addiction is an illness. It's not anything to be ashamed of. It's certainly something you want to do something about. But we need to take the stigma away from this so that we can talk to each other about these things and avoid these kind of situations. If you do know anyone who's struggling, if you might be struggling, and if you're in the United States, I might say there's a confidential free helpline that you can call. It's 1-800-662-4357, and all free, and they'll get you the help that you need. So anytime, day or night, it's a crisis line. You can call it, and they will help you. So you are not alone. And please give this. I actually have this number on my refrigerator. So if there's any kind of crisis that you're in, they can help you. But it's particularly built toward drug and alcohol addiction. So anyway, that's my little public service announcement. And if you have a half a minute, maybe say a little prayer or give a little good thought for my boy Edward. And with that, we're going to get right into the show. As you guys know, I always say this. It's like no matter what's going on during the week, and this week has been one heck of a week. This is my time to really get into the subjects and the ideas that I'm really interested in. This is sort of my fun time every Friday evening. So I really appreciate you joining us. And tonight we've got a killer show. And we have our wonderful guest who is an author. But not only is he an author, but he is the great-great-grandson of the Outlaws, James. And I have to say, I'm kicking myself. This is another one of those times where, I'm just discovering this gentleman, and since I was introduced to him, and by the way, I'm thank my Heidi Hollis for that. I've seen he's been on all these different shows and Friends shows. How did I miss him? But I think he and I might have a particular good time tonight because of some connections with what we're both, our researchers have led us both into. And believe it or not, we're going to talk about Jesse James, the fact that he faked his death and lived on, left some really cool things behind, codes, clues, maps, letters. And there is a Knight Templar connection, believe it or not. And it's Friday the 13th. How apropos could it be? Because, as many of you guys know, the Friday the 13th curse or superstition came about when the Knights Templar were wiped out. Oh my gosh, I'm forgetting the year. Was it 1203 or was it was late? Oh my God. But it was October the 13th. I do know that. Anyway, without any further delay, and I'm going to quit rambling, I'm going to bring on my guest, Dan Duke. Hey, Dan.
How you doing?
You're there in the dark.
Yeah.
Dan's in rural Texas, right?
That's right. I live, northwest of Austin.
To the top of the hill to talk to us.
Yes. Yep.
We can already. I can see right now you are going to get me talking like Toki again. I'm going to get back into my Southern accent, and people are going to say, "What is she doing?" But anyway, thank you guys for the nice comments in the chat room. I really appreciate it. Love you guys. Anyhow, I was so surprised when Heidi reached out to me. She said, you got to meet this guy. He's like, he knows about your film and there's all connections and he's Jesse James. I'm going, oh my God, that sounds amazing. So you have done several books on these topics. And I guess the main one that we're going to kind of be looking into tonight, although we're going to be talking about the other ones too, is Jesse James and the Lost Templar Treasure. Woo! And I'll tell you another one I'm really interested in, and I didn't know about this one until you sent this over, and I'm definitely getting this one too. And it is Wild Wild West: Secret History, Outlaws, Secret Societies. Oh my goodness, you can't get any better than that.
Yeah.
As I was telling you, I grew up hearing stories about the outlaws, and in my neighborhood where I grew up, our big outlaw, and maybe it was just me because I was a girl, was the bandit queen Belle Starr, who happened to be buried nearby where I grew up, and lots of ghost stories about Belle Starr going around that area, around the little town where I grew up, Stigler, Oklahoma. But tell me now, when did your research start? Did you discover something from your great-great-grandfather and it set you on a path? How did that get going?
Well, my late mother, Betty Dorset Duke, she had grown up, as everybody in my family has grown up on her side, hearing that Jesse James didn't die as history said, and that he faked his death and lived to an old age in Central Texas, and in Blevins, Texas. And he died at the age of 97 in 1943. And I thought, wow, this is wild. But, I grew up hearing it. And when you grow up hearing it from family, it doesn't seem too wild. It just seems normal until you go to school, you start reading the history books or hearing a little bit about Jesse. And, history states that he died by shot in the back of the head by one of his fellow gang members, who was Bob and Charlie Ford. And then, so my mom, when my sister and I went to college, our late mother she finally had the time to do some research and look into it. She wanted to prove once and for all which story was right, the family story or traditionally accepted history. And after just going through our photos, we had family photos passed down along with this diary and other objects and items he had. But we couldn't go on our word. So she went to the Texas Department of Public Safety, which is our state police. She went down to the headquarters to their forensic lab, and they verified that our family photos matched historically accepted photos of Jesse and his family, like his mother and different members in his family. So after that, she went to the Austin Police Department Photographic Forensic Lab, and they verified the same thing. Our photos matched the historically accepted photos. And she went to a third group in New Jersey at the time. They were called Visionics, and they've been recently purchased by another company, I think Identics. They were facial leaders, world leaders in facial recognition technology. And, they sold their program to international airports, the military, stuff like that. They also verified that our photos matched historically accepted photos. So we were like, okay, this is amazing. We've got all this proof. The photos tell the tale. And we thought the world would be happy. And a lot of people, they have mixed emotions on it. But the people who shocked us most were the James Farman Museum in Missouri. They didn't want to hear it. That was the last thing they wanted to hear. So we went back to the drawing board, started using census records, everything we could find to show them that, yes, our story is true. And they didn't want to hear the truth. It ended with when every argument they threw at us, my late mother overcame and would just use the facts. She kept emotion out of it, just used the facts. And it ended up with them sending us death threats, my mother, myself, and my sister. And it was a long story. Fortunately, the FBI got involved and they put a stop to it. But then my mother had written her third book, and a few years later, in 2015, she passed away. And my sister and I vowed to continue her research. And I was never going to publish the information I'd found over the years regarding the treasures and the treasure stories. And after she died, I thought, why not? I was mentally drained, just tired, all the stress and trauma of her passing away right in front of me. I thought I might as well just write it down and see where it goes. And it ended up finding a literary agent, and it got published, and the rest is history. But I wrote about the treasures, everything I'd found on that. And when that book came out, I thought people are going to think I'm crazy. And, but I didn't really care at the time. So I found my literary agent. She got the publisher. It hit the shelves, and I thought, here goes. People are going to think I'm nuts. And I didn't know until it hit the shelves that the current Grand Master of the Knights Templar, Timothy Hogan, wrote a glowing endorsement of my book, admitting that I had cracked part of the code dealing with the treasures of the Templar that dated back to the temple in Jerusalem. And that was, to me, the best compliment I ever could have had. Anyway, that's how I got into it. And I apologize if I run off down rabbit holes. There's a million rabbit holes that branch off from this story.
That's the way this kind of research is, though. It's like you pick up a thread, and then you think you got to, and then it takes you down another road, and then another road, and it's like, oh my God, you're looking for one thing and you find another.
It does.
But now, so let me understand. So you knew that you were related to Jesse James already.
Yes.
So you've always known that.
Yeah, and I never dreamed, none of us had ever dreamed that an Old West outlaw would have ties to Freemasonry, and not only Freemasonry, but treasures from the Knights Templar. And it just kept going. It's like every few months while researching, we would stumble across a new revelation that just blew our minds. And we would constantly, recheck everything we'd done and double check, just because and this, it's interesting because back then we were, you get frustrated when you're researching and you come across revelations like that, and you think you it's almost like you have to be spoon fed a little at a time so that you're mentally ready or prepared for those kind of revelations, if that makes any sense.
I'm going to tell you something. I have seen more than a few people actually sort of like lose their minds, actually psychotic breaks and have to be hospitalized.
Yeah.
Like getting their minds blown by following these pathways, these research. They get so into it. Sometimes they get frightened by what they found, and sometimes it's just so contrary to what they've always thought, or they get to be thinking, oh, I shouldn't be looking into this. I might be in some kind of danger. But I've seen it happen time and time again. It's really...
That's true. We've anytime you're dealing with people like Jesse James and other Old West outlaws, there's always treasure hunters who come out of the woodwork, and sometimes they sound insane. And I think some of them, I'm convinced, quite a few of them have lost their minds. And it's almost like the treasure or the lust for treasure takes over, and they don't even realize they've lost their minds. They don't act normal. That said, growing up in Central Texas, just a conservative area with, you go to church. Our mom always made sure we went to church and, just whatever. But you're taught one thing. And then when I start researching the treasures, and it leads me down the path to Jewish Kabbalah, Christian Kabbalah, and even occult Kabbalah and other mystic beliefs or mystic traditions, it tends to, at first it scared me, and then I would sit back, and it reminded me, there was an interview with a Jewish rabbi I listened to once, and he said the Jewish people were like the tide. They run to and then run from God throughout history. And I thought, that reminds me of the research exactly. I mean, you can take little bits at a time, but if it's all at once, it's too much for most people. And that,
I don't know if you've come across this in your research, but my colleague who's often on this show with me, is a historian and a real historian, not like me. I'm a history buff. He is an academic, and he's been turning up a lot. In fact, he's in the middle of writing a second book on the Templars, and he discovered a very heavy Jewish element in the Templars, which is kind of interesting because they were Christian knights. But, there were Jewish Templars, and it's really amazing. There are things, and I know what you mean about first it scares you. I kind of had that situation going on back in the 80s when I started reading a lot and studying a lot and realizing, wait a minute, we don't have the full story here.
mm-hmm.
But after a while, it becomes very freeing. It allows you to really research something without those prejudices, and it allows you to look at stuff straight on without
That's
being
true.
frightened away or trying to fit it into your own personal beliefs. So
Yeah.
I think it's like
It is
cleansing,
freeing.
honestly.
It is. And yeah, exactly.
If
I
it
couldn't have
doesn't
said
kill
it
you or
better.
drive you crazy.
I think if you go into it with an open mind and you're just seeking knowledge, or that's my I guess my opinion is, if you're just seeking knowledge and you're going into it with an open mind, it's a lot healthier for people. Some people, like some of the treasure hunters I'd mentioned, they're going into it looking for treasure. That's all they want.
Right.
And in a way, that's a selfish need. So maybe that's why they went down the wrong path.
Well, there was something I heard. What was it? When you go in search of the Holy Grail, you must be pure of heart and pure of intention. Otherwise, you're not going to get it, whatever it is.
That's true. Well,
But,
and I like after your documentary Bloodline, for example, I remember that topic even today still it seems to garner a lot of varied emotions from people. Sometimes really, I guess, violent emotions, just
yeah,
because they don't want to think that Jesus could have had children, and there's a bloodline that comes from it. And I don't know why that bothers people. My brother, for example, I've argued with on that topic. He's a deacon in his Baptist church, and he, without going into detail on that, he gets mad about it. So, and
oh
I've tried
yeah,
to point out it
I've been
doesn't
to
change the message.
a few arguments with family members, uh, about some of the ideas that I get into. But
But it doesn't change the message that
we were
Jesus had.
Baptist, Southern Baptist, raised Southern Baptist as well, and it is, it took me a while to sort of break free of that kind of thinking.
Yeah.
To just be able to say, okay, I want to look into this for myself and see how I really feel about all this, not what, someone has told me to think about it. So it's been a great experience, allowing myself to delve into all kinds of areas. There are still some things that are a little scary, some of the darker things, but
Yeah.
even those I don't worry too much about. But anyhow, now you feel like that there's also a connection with a group that I've heard a lot about and read a lot about called the Knights of the Golden Circle.
The night. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I know there's a treasure that was supposed to be called the Confederate Gold or something like that,
Mm-hmm.
that supposedly was connected to or being held by the Knights of the Golden Circle. Does that treasure have any connection with this story?
The legends do, but I don't believe the Knights of the Golden Circle had as much influence as people attribute to them. A lot of the Knights of the Golden Circle played an important role for their side, for the Confederacy. During the Civil War, they were spies, saboteurs. Their basic goal was to do anything they could to slow down Union troop movements. After the war was over, they allegedly had changed their goal to basically getting as much wealth as they could any way they could to fund a second civil war. And that never happened, as we all know. So, and in a way, that reminds me of two rival football teams. The losing side always wants another shot. But
Yeah.
I don't believe the treasures. I do believe they had some treasures, and I do believe there were Freemasons who were involved with that. But I also think they played a useful scapegoat, or kind of like a useful idiot, and without trying to offend anybody. That was their role in that game. They had wealth. People knew they had wealth, and what better way? Well, in my opinion, I believe Freemasonry or Freemasons got that gold and got it away from the Knights of the Golden Circle. There's a lot of rumors. There's accusations, and people claim that Albert Pike was the Knights of the Golden Circle. They claim Jesse was, but I've never seen any documents or any proof proving that they were. Of course, it was a secret society, so as secretive, some can be so secretive it would be almost impossible to find any proof. So I can't deny they were, but at the same time, I haven't seen proof that they were. And the legends of some of the treasures that are attributed to them predate the Knights of the Golden Circle by centuries. So, in my opinion, that shows they weren't the people behind the treasures. A lot of people end up going off down. Oh, go ahead.
Oh no, I was going to just say that you mentioned Albert Pike. As many of you know, is like the most famous and well thought of Freemason of all time. He wrote Rules and Dogma, I guess, and a lot of things that sort of set the standards for Freemasonry, modern Freemasonry, anyway. But he was on an expedition going across America, and he left the expedition in Arkansas, in the Ozarks, and he stayed there, never left. He had a lot of interaction with the different Indian tribes, especially the Cherokee. And there seems to be, and he lived in a town called Ozark, Arkansas. And, Ozark is sort of a bastardization of the two French words, O's ark, which means to the ark or of the ark. And I always thought that was kind of interesting. Why did he go there? And there were some other sort of interesting places around that very area. A place called Magazine Mountain, which, a magazine is like a repository for something. And then there's Mount Nebo, which is, I guess the birthplace of Moses. And so there's all these strange connections in that little area. And I started like trying to put some things together, and I started thinking maybe some of the treasure, came across to the New World. And I'm talking specifically about the temple treasure, the treasure of the temple of Jerusalem that was taken by the Knights Templar and disappeared, or most of it disappeared into different places. After that, there's been all kinds of speculation, especially for like the Ark of the Covenant and the Great Menorah. And but I just wondered, have you seen anything and that would lead you at all to Arkansas or the Ozarks in relation to the treasure that your great-grandfather was part of?
Yeah, it's actually when I was researching the treasures, and I'll try to make this as brief as possible. At the beginning, we had a treasure map passed down through the family in one of Jesse's diaries, and also another map that came separate from that. But trying to find the map consisted of a geometrical design and some words written in code, and the code wasn't hard to crack. It was just the geometrical design. He never listed a topographic area or any starting point, so nobody ever knew where to look. And
where to
until
apply
later,
that design. Is it like something that you can apply it to a particular spot, but you just don't know where the spot is?
Exactly. And we knew it was near Blevins, Texas, but we didn't know where. And that's a large area. It's a large area, and we didn't know where to start. So fast forward, there was a man who was a child when Jesse was old, back in the 1930s. George Roaming, and at the time George was 10 to 12 years old. He had met Jesse. He lived nearby. Jesse hired George and swore him to an oath and hired him to move 700 bars of gold about 20 miles from his house. So they had a large wagon they called a dray. They moved the gold 20 miles away. When they got to the place they were to deliver it to, there were two other elderly gentlemen about Jesse's age, and they had each hired a boy about George's age. And George knew the two boys. The boys dug the hole, buried the gold, covered it up, and they all went their own way. Jesse kept 20 bars for himself. So what remained in the hole was 680 bars of gold, weighing 15 pounds each. George said back a few years later, he and the other two boys he knew all lied about their age, and they joined World War II. So, and George was abused as a child by his dad. His dad would beat him bad. So George was looking for any way to get out. Lied about his age. Went to the war. When he got out of the war, he said the two boys he knew had died in the war, and afterwards, all three old men who were involved with that had also passed away. As far as he knew, he was the only one who knew where the treasure was. So he was in El Paso. He was in his 80s and he was sick, he drew a little map. And this sounds like a typical treasure story. Before he died, he drew a map. We went out. Yeah, we located the area. It's on Fort Hood Military Reservation. So we went back and told George, it's on Fort Hood Military Reservation. There's no way we're going to find it or even get on that property. And he just shook his head, and probably a year later passed away. But he gave us at least the location. And then we met Wagner Carr, former Attorney General for the state of Texas. He was a friend of President LBJ and a lot of other people. But Wagner was interested in Jesse and the treasures. And I found out later Wagner was also a Freemason. He would talk to my late mother and me. He sent his driver out to show us 3 locations where large treasures were recovered, and their recovery was overseen by Texas Rangers. I asked Mr. Carr where the treasures ended up, and he would never say. And I thought, well, I'm not going to push too much. It's obvious he doesn't want to tell me where they went. But I had 3 more locations, and using those, back to the Knights of the Golden Circle, they had a treasure template that was in the shape of a rhombus. It had 2 concentric circles and a lot of symbols inside it. And a lot of people had said that was the Knights of the Golden Circle treasure template. And I thought, well, if it works, maybe it'll work on this. And it worked like a charm. When I knew the locations of all the treasures that I'd heard about, I fitted over Jesse's house as the center of the template, and all the other spots fell perfect within the template. Yeah, they all lined up.
Wow.
Then I found out later it wasn't the Knights of the Golden Circle. It was a Freemason template, and it actually started before them, I believe, with the Templar. If you look at the western door on the Temple Church in London, the template's on their door. It just, that amazed me. It blew my mind.
I'm going to have to look at that. I bet there's a picture of it.
Yeah, and I've got a,
but I didn't know what to look for.
Yeah, you can Google like Western Door Temple Church in London, and you can see the shape. It's not exact to the template, but it's when you lay the template over that design, it fits perfectly. So while working on that, I thought, just out of curiosity, I was on Google Earth with an overlay. I wondered if the template if it fit together like a grid, and it did. And I ended up spreading it over the state of Texas. And I went on over the years, I've done half of America in this grid. And it lines up with like the Los Lunas Decalogue stone in New Mexico, which is a stone that's got Jewish writing that was allegedly put there before the Native Americans in the area even got there. They said pioneers would ask the natives who did this, and they said it was there when they got there. Or as far as they can remember. It lines up with Scott Wolter's the Runestone, the Hooked X story he's written about. Parts of Oklahoma, the Newport Tower in Rhode Island. That's attributed to either John Dee or the Templar based on different sides. But if you look at it in an open mind, the Templar and John Dee were basically one and the same. I think John Dee was just an extension of the Templar beliefs later on. And then he was the mentor of Francis Bacon. I feel like I'm rambling here, but the treasures line up with known treasure sites, or the grid does, and areas of historic interest and mystery, if that makes sense. One of the treasures that's attributed to the Knights of the Golden Circle is a treasure that was found in the 30s by a guy named Doc Noss at Victoria Peak, New Mexico. And that treasure supposedly back in the 30s had $3 billion in gold and jewels in that. Can you imagine the worth now? But Doc Noss was murdered by someone, they say a business accomplice. And then later the treasures, that area of Victoria Peak was surrounded by White Sands Missile Range. LBJ, Nixon had involvement allegedly, and in fact, the treasures at Victoria Peak are mentioned in the Watergate hearings. So it keeps going deeper and deeper. So, but during everything we've dealt with Jesse, the treasures, It always seemed like Masons were coming out of the woodwork. And I'd never really paid attention to Masonry or anything dealing with that before then. And now I'm a 32nd degree Scottish Rite Freemason myself. But it shocked me. I remember when I went to the lodge, I thought, finally, these guys will know everything I'm talking about. And the guys in the normal lodges had, they didn't know what I was talking about. So
No.
I thought this
There
is
are
wonderful.
Masons, and then there are Masons. There
Yeah.
are Masons.
And
I call those kind the Masons who lunch.
yeah.
They get together and do things and maybe raise funds for nice charities and things. But
Yeah. They're great guys.
Kathy's getting impatient in the chat room. She said, "So where did all the treasure go?"
Some of it's still out there. I believe some of the really large ones are still there, but they're also watched. I know for a fact they're watched. We got near one in Oklahoma. My late mother, and my dad and I went up to Oklahoma looking for one, and as soon as we got back home, we didn't find it, but we came back armed with information. As soon as we walked in the door, within 30 minutes of getting back to Texas at home, we got a phone call telling us that's not for you, and don't mess with that spot. And the guy who called us,
What's the plan for all that? Do you think?
I don't know. I have theories on the plan. I'm not sure really. I think some of it's meant for maybe a rainy day fund. I think there's stake, and I think it depends on the treasure. I know they've added to the treasures throughout the centuries, but there's a lot of different theories that you could apply to it. Maybe they all apply. The treasures were in the shape. There's two templates. One was in the shape of the Kabbalistic Tree of Life. It stretches from Williamsburg, Virginia to Victoria Peak, New Mexico. And, if you're familiar with the Kabbalistic Tree of Life, there's 10 Sephira. And so there's 10 major treasure sites within that template. And then the smaller treasures, and they're actually, some of those are quite large. There's the 3 veils of negative existence, which overlay the Tree of Life template, and I call it the grid template or veil template. It all lines up with Kabbalistic thought, occult, Christian, and Jewish Kabbalah, and it's a mix of all 3. And then that it ends up going back to there were like the painting Nicholas Poussin, Et in Arcadia Ego.
I believe hanging in my living room.
Yes, I believe that where they're pointing on the guy is pointing at the tomb. The guy who's knelt down, he's pointing at the tomb. The shadow reminds me of a harp, and this is just my theory. I think it ties in with Orpheus and the lyre. And if you look at Cassini's Celestial Globe of 1792, I think the lyre or lyra, the constellation, is set over a part of over Kansas, around Kansas and Colorado, which pinpoints on the template I discovered, the Tree of Life template, one of the major potential treasure sites. Oh. And I know this goes down a million rabbit holes. It ties in with Greek mythology, occultists, Christians, Judaism, and a lot of other mystic traditions. It ties together so beautifully. The measurements, the distances, everything involved, the planets, the precession of the equinoxes. It's amazing. I feel like
you're not telling me anything I haven't heard about the same stuff that I know about all those processions of the equinoxes, all the whole thing. It's very, very familiar, very familiar. And now and everyone knows why people go cuckoo when they're studying this, because you think, okay, I must be crazy because this can't involve everything, but then it seems like it does. It's like you think you got something that's a complete separate deal, And then you realize down the line somewhere, well, that's tied in too. So are we crazy? I don't know. But how could this? It's like, what is this? Is it a game? Is it, and
I
what,
think it's
like in the movie, my good, wonderful late friend Tim Wallace Murphy said, is it a game? What's the point?
Well, I think, and I trust me, I would question myself. I thought, okay, am I going insane? Is this completely wacko? And then I would come back to it later, and I would try to research it from a different angle, always looking at it from different angles, and it all came back to the same theory. And I thought, okay, this can't, either I'm completely nuts or there's some truth to this. But then I know for a fact that the templates line up with known treasure sites and sites of that are of historical interest but remain mysterious to most traditional historians, like the Los Lunas Decalogue Stone, the Newport Tower, and places like that. And then I stumbled on Marie Bauer Hall. She was the wife of Manly Palmer Hall. She wrote a book, Foundations Unearthed, dealing with treasures that she had cracked codes in the works of Shakespeare, and claimed that it tied in, that Shakespeare was actually written by Francis Bacon and some of his peers. And I truly believe that now. But she said the codes that she decrypted led her to Bruton Parish Church in Williamsburg, Virginia. And I thought, okay, yeah. So and they mocked her when she said she knew of the original foundations of the church. People in town mocked her. Historians mocked her. She proved them wrong. Everything she'd researched pointed her to the original foundations, and she went further to state that approximately 20 feet below where the altar would have been in that church is a vault containing treasures that could shake the foundations of history, not just traditional treasures like gold and silver, but of information dealing with religion and politics and true history. And I thought, oh my God. And what amazed me even more, if you measure the distance from Williamsburg, Virginia to Victoria Peak, it's 1,715 miles. Well, when I look at Bruton Parish Church, and Christopher Wren also ties in with this story he's an architect, and he was so much more. He was also a Freemason. He helped design the church, the College of William and Mary, which is, I think it's today the oldest continuously operating college in the United States. Mm-hmm. But anyway, the building he designed is 1,715 feet from Bruton Parish Church. And I thought, oh my God, it's 1,715 miles. Why 1715? And that number and a lot of other numbers would pop up through this. They all have Kabbalistic meanings and other meanings associated with them that tie back into all the esoteric stuff that pointed me that direction to begin with. It kept blowing my mind. The more I look into it, and even recalling it, it's been a wild journey. So
I mean, I can understand that. I mean, it's very much reflective of, that sort of area in Southwest France where, we did most of the filming for Bloodline. And, it's like you said, it's certain places and it's mysterious places and that come into play, that just seem to be connected. And now this overlay that you've done that goes, like you said, that was like the Tree of Life that goes all the way to New Mexico from the East Coast. Did it go through Arkansas? Did it go over Arkansas? Did you see anything in there?
Yes, it go, and there are sites in Arkansas, I believe, that are of great importance. It actually goes right.
I'm going to say something really, really crazy. Do you think that any of it has to do, and I don't even believe I'm going to say this, but do you think that any of the hiding of treasure in Arkansas has anything at all to do with the crystals? Most of the crystals from around the world come from Arkansas and Brazil, I think. Um, so, I mean, because they are sort of, conductive and all this kind of stuff. I just, if there would have been any connection in that, and I know that's like throwing in a red herring, but
Well, I've never looked at that. It could be. I don't know. I haven't
like
looked
the
at
caves, the crystal caves and things. Would that
It could be. What I was looking at the template, the design, the tree of life with the three veils of native existence. I think one theory I have is they did that in that manner so as to, in a way, bring about the blessings of deity on their work and on the nation they were creating.
Mm.
And I don't know. That's just a theory I have, but and that the crystals may have played the role in that. I don't know.
We know that secret societies were definitely involved in the creation of what we now call the United States of America. George Washington was a high-ranking Freemason. I mean, many of them were. What about in your research? Have you come across a connection with, what your great-great-grandfather talked about in the treasures and the maps with Native American tribes in particular?
Yes. Quanah Parker, for example, he was the last great chief of the Comanche tribe. Jesse and a lot of Jesse's friends who are listed in his diary, who were famous, well-known cattlemen that helped, they basically helped settle Texas. Burke Burnett, the Hitson brothers, and different other cattlemen, and they were very wealthy. They were all friendly with Quanah Parker. And I also know for a fact that Albert Pike, for example, was good friends with a lot of the Native American tribes.
Yes.
And I think, in fact, one of the treasures in Oklahoma that I believe is a large one is on Comanche lands.
Oh, and so that would be what, Western Oklahoma then?
Yes. Well, but there are others in Oklahoma, but one in particular that I'm thinking of is on Comanche lands. So, and
about,
I used to.
What about Eastern Oklahoma, like with the Cherokees? I mean, for instance, why is every single member of the tribal council a high-ranking Freemason? And they always have been for years and years and years.
I would say there's probably a reason. There's
a reason.
I think so too.
I think things.
They were very friendly with Albert Pike, Jesse, and a lot of Jesse's friends. In fact, Quanah Parker wanted to be recognized as a general. He saw generals who, U.S. generals had stars all over their shoulders and stuff like that. He wanted stars. So the cattlemen who were friends with him built the Star House for Quanah Parker, and it stands to this day in Catch, Oklahoma, right outside of Catch, Oklahoma. It's called the Star House, and it had stars all over the roof of the house. And he had more stars than any general.
Oh, wow. Now, correct me if I'm wrong about Quanah Parker, but wasn't he married to a white woman that had been kidnapped by the tribe, and then she later?
Was his mother.
Oh, she wanted to stay. She stayed.
Yeah. She was the white lady was Cynthia Ann Parker, and that was Quanah's mother. And his father was Nakona, I believe, and his mom was Cynthia Ann Parker. And then she wanted to stay. Some Texas Rangers raided a camp. They thought they were rescuing her. She didn't want to go. They took her back to her family, and she died of. A lot of people claim she died of a broken heart. And later, a lot of the influential cattlemen who were friendly with Quanah had his mother's grave exhumed, and they moved her body to a cemetery where Quanah wanted her buried in Oklahoma.
Oh,
it was a sad story.
it is sad. It's really sad.
Yeah.
Yeah, my mother was very much interested in her and a lot of books on her, and
Yeah.
I just remember her talking about it. And I thought she was married to Cornel Parker, but that was her son.
But after another point I wanted to make is the story mentioning like Rennes-le-Chateau and the stories in France. I think this story is a continuation of that story. I think it's all the same story. It's just this is the American or the branch of the story that extends to the Americas.
Yeah.
And the whole reason behind that, I believe, I mean, looking back and oh, sorry, looking back through history, a lot of the groups who were involved, Freemasons, Rosicrucians, alchemists, Jewish people, rabbis, a lot of other people, the Cathars, people of other Middle Eastern traditions, they all had one thing in common. The power in that day was the Catholic Church, and they rode roughshod over everybody. If you didn't see things their way, they'd kill you. So one of the great drivers,
they'll just mow the whole town down.
One of the great drivers,
a heretic problem, they just burn the whole town down. Yeah,
one of the great drivers they had
during the Albigensian Crusades. They were going through one town, and they asked the Pope, how will we know the heretics? Because of course everybody looked the same.
Yeah.
And the Pope said, "Kill them all. God will know His own."
Yeah, that's a real Christian way to look at it, isn't it?
That's a real nice thing. But yeah, oh boy, the Catholic Church, the Roman Church used to be really, really scary.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of stories behind that too. But I think the reason one thing they all had in common was a common enemy. And they probably, in my opinion, from everything I've looked at, it seems logical to think that they would want a place when they found out about the New World. What better place than the New World to start a country where they could have liberty and freedom of religion? And I think that was a large reason for a lot of the treasures moving here. Not all of them. I think there's still a lot in Europe, but I think that was one of the main reasons. And then the designs, the Tree of Life, the veil, the grid template, I think that may serve as like in a way, a signal or a charm to bring about God's blessings on the country and the new nation. And in addition to that, it played a logical role of serving as a rainy day fund. If you're going to start a country, you're going to need reserves of wealth. And I think that's where that also falls into line.
That's the things that I would know. I mean, I'm trying to find a bit of gold for myself or anything, but I want to know the answers. I want to know why and what's it for, and are they still planning on some use for it? Are they taking some of it out at times, or what is the whole deal? And we are getting so close to the end of the show, and people are starting to panic, and they're saying, "I have to have you back," and I absolutely will. I mean,
I would love to return.
Other things we could have gotten into if we would have had time, but you guys look for Dan Duke's books. I'm going to get them all. And I and again, I have to apologize to you, Dan, because it was such a last minute request. My booking fell through, and you were so gracious to agree to come on this quickly. But because it was so fast, I didn't have time to read the whole book, but I'm going to go back and finish it now. And I did manage to scan it really well. It's really interesting. And, you will have to come back. Let's do a part 2.
I would be very honored to be back, and I'm honored to be on your show tonight. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much. And thanks for mentioning my film.
Yes. that film. Oh God, my mom and I loved it. My late mother loved it. My sister, we would sit around and watch it over and over. And it was just blew our, it was amazing. That
So nice.
Yeah. And when
Yeah,
I think of your
we're
film,
gonna.
it reminds me of memories of my late mother. So it's always that film in
Oh,
particular always has a good spot in my heart. Just ties in with a lot of memories.
well, your mom must have been very open-minded,
She
and
was.
so that's really nice. Yeah, yeah. Well, I wish I could have met her and talked to her about that. But tell your sister hey for me.
I will. And my sister wanted me to tell you hello as well. In fact, Teresa, my sister Teresa, she co-authored the second book that I had. It was The Mysterious Life and Faked Death of Jesse James.
Ooh, yeah.
Without her, I couldn't have got that done without her. So
Oh, that's great. Teamwork.
yes.
Yeah, well, tell her she wants to come on. We'll yank her on here too with us.
All right. That sounds great. She would be happy
All
to.
right. Well, I hope that you don't mind if I keep in touch, Dan, because there's so many things I want
Yeah.
to ask you about. We haven't had
I,
time for today.
I don't
But I'll
mind at
keep
all.
in touch.
Yeah.
We'll come back on again. We'll schedule something and bring you back.
Okay.
All right,
Sounds good. Thank
everybody.
you.
Thank you, Dan, and thanks for everyone. Thanks everyone for watching and listening tonight. And hope join us next week for another round of night vision. And remember what I said: if you have problems, worries with addiction, in any kind of mental health crisis, call that hotline 1-800-662-4357. Love you guys.